In the previous program, I spoke to you about prayer and what prayer was about. Let me recapitulate some of that for you. Let me show you what prayer can do for a person and what it is not. And once again, let me do that in the form of a story. Here's a good image of life that I picked up somewhere in a book once. You're sitting in a theater, listening to a concert, and suddenly you remember that you forgot to park your car. Oh, sorry, you forgot to lock it. And you're anxious. You cannot get up now and go and lock your car. You cannot concentrate on the symphony. And you're caught between two things. I thought, what a lovely image of life. Let me give you a contrast to that. There's a great Japanese story of a guy who's running away from a tiger. He comes to a precipice and he begins to slide down the precipice. Then he grabs hold of a branch of a tree that's growing on the side of the precipice. He looks up and there is this tiger looking at him, and there's no way of crawling up. He looks down, there's a drop of about 10,000 feet. And next to him there's a bush, a berry bush, and the berries are ripe. So he plucks one of those berries, puts it in his mouth, and it tasted so sweet. He was able to live life one moment at a time, which is the only way to live it. Which is the only way to live it. But it sounds like an impossible feat, doesn't it? Did you hear how those South African mines were discovered? It's very interesting. There was this man sitting, a tourist or a traveler, sitting at the door of the hut of the village headman. He saw the village headman's children playing with something that looked like marbles. He picked one of them up and looked at it, and his heart began to race. It was a diamond. So he said to the village headman, you know, my children back home also play with things like this. They call them marbles. Could I take a few of these back with me? I'd be ready to give you some tobacco for them. And the village headman says, we've got millions of these here. I mean, it would be robbery to take your tobacco, but I'd be happy to take anything you gave me. So he gave him the tobacco, goes back home, sells those diamonds, comes back, buys all of that land, and becomes the richest man in the world. The point of the story is, those people were living on top of a treasure and did not know it. That is another image of life. Life is a banquet, but most people are starving. They never discover the treasure. It's a lovely story from my country of a man who sees a wandering mendicant pass by the village, and he rushes up to him and says, give me the stone, the precious stone. And the mendicant says, what stone are you talking about? Last night the Lord Vishnu appeared to me in a dream, said the man, and he said, a wandering mendicant will be passing by the village at about 11 in the morning. If he gives you the stone he has, you will be the richest man in the world. So the mendicant rummaged in his little sack, pulled out this diamond and said, is this what you're looking for? It was the largest diamond in the world. Yes, said the man, would you give it to me? Of course, take it. Found it somewhere there in my wanderings. The man takes the diamond and he's going to go back home, but then something strikes him. He sits under a tree and he ponders all day. Towards evening, he comes back to the mendicant and he says to him, I don't want this diamond. Could you give me the riches that makes it possible for you to give this thing away? That is what prayer could do if properly practiced and properly understood. It would give you the riches that would make all of these things, they wouldn't matter at all. Someone said so well, life is something that happens to us while we're busy at something else. We're busy trying to impress everyone. We're busy trying to look good. We're busy trying to win the Olympics. We're busy trying to succeed. And life passes us by. I read the story the other day of a woman who died in New York some years ago. She was living on hot dogs and skimping, going around looking for shoe boxes to heat in her apartment. That's how they found out. They found her. She was almost starving to death. She was over 90. They take her to the hospital. 3 weeks later, she dies. When they cleaned out her apartment, they found nearly $300,000 there. Another perfect image. There is something within us that's precious, a precious pearl. There's a treasure there. The kingdom of God is within you. If we could only discover that. Thomas Carlyle put it so well. He said the great tragedy of life lies not in how much we suffer, but in how much we miss. And there's another mystic who says human beings are born asleep, they live asleep, and they die asleep. But that is so true. Maybe they're not born asleep, they're born awake. But by the time they develop their brains, they fall asleep. And they breed children in their sleep, they bring them up in their sleep, they go in for big business in their sleep, they go into government in their sleep, and they die in their sleep. They never wake up. That is what spirituality is all about, to wake up. You're moving around in a drunken stupor. It's as if you were hypnotized. You're drugged, and you don't know what you're missing. How would we get out of this? How would we awake? How do you know that you're asleep? I told you that in the previous program. Are you upset and disturbed? Do you have problems? Are you not enjoying life? Never doubt it, you're fast asleep. The mystics tell us that when they see what they'd been looking at all along but had never seen, they discover an overflowing joy in the heart of things. Without a single dissenting voice, they tell us overflowing love and joy everywhere. And even though they would have pain and what we call sufferings, there's a tremendous joy which nothing can shake or take away from them. How do we get this? Through understanding. I talked about those illusions of ours. If you would see your illusions and your erroneous ideas, they will drop, you will change. But that you have to do. It's useless saying to God, gimme, gimme, gimme. Remember, go and tie that camel of yours. God cannot be bothered doing for you what you can do for yourself. Like the guy whose beard is burning, and they say, your beard is on fire. He says, but can't you see me praying for rain? I'm doing something about it. You're saying, Lord, that I may see, and you've got your eyes tightly shut. Understanding, awareness, the willingness to see. Now I'm going to take one big illusion that almost everyone suffers from, and I'm going to talk about it during this program. If you could get released from that, oh, how you would come awake. Let me explain it in this way. It'll be a kind of a meditation that you and I will do together. Think of a little child. It's given a taste for drugs. As it grows up, the whole body of that child is craving for the drug. To live without the drug brings a pain and a suffering so great that it seems preferable to die. You and I, as children, were given a drug. It was called approval. It was called appreciation. It was called praise, success, acceptance, popularity. Once you took the drug, society could control you. The tentacles of society got into you. You become a robot. You want to see what kind of a robot existence human beings live? Listen to this. You've got the robot who comes here, and I say, "Ma, you're looking pretty." And the robot goes right up. I press a button called appreciation, and right up it goes. Then I press another button called criticism, flat on the earth. Total control. We're so affected by this. We're so easily controlled by it. And when we're deprived of it, we become so terrified. We're so frightened to make mistakes. We're so frightened that people will laugh at us. I saw a little kid once, 3 years old. She wandered into our dining room dressed in her nightie. So we sort of applauded. She thought we were laughing at her. She ran away, and her mother had to carry her in while she was struggling. She didn't want to come. She thought we had laughed at her. And I thought, she's only 3 years old, but already we've made a little monkey out of her. Somebody taught her this, that when you do this, she's supposed to feel good. And when you say boo, she's supposed to feel bad. Once you give her that drug, she's finished. You think Jesus Christ was controlled by this kind of thing? By what people thought of him and what they said about him? Awake people break out of this drug. And when you make a mistake or when you're rejected, you feel such a tremendous emptiness, such a loneliness. You keep crawling back, begging for that drug called encouragement, acceptance, belonging. So they got us nicely controlled. How do you get out of it? First of all, let's see some of the results. You know something? As a result of having taken this drug, you have lost your ability to love. You know why? Because you cannot see any human being anymore. You're so conscious of whether they accept you or they don't, whether they approve of you or they don't. You're seeing them as a threat to your drug or as a support to your drug. Think of the politician. The politician frequently doesn't see people at all. He sees votes. And if you're neither a threat nor a support to his getting votes, he doesn't even notice you. The businessman, he sees big bucks. He doesn't see people. He sees business deals. But we're no different if we're under the effect of this drug. The robot, I like you, and the robot will automatically, mechanically react, oh, he's good, he likes me. I don't like you, he's awful, he doesn't like me. See? The drug. How can you love what you do not even see? You want to get rid of the drug? You have to tear those tentacles out of your system. They've gone to the marrow of your bones. This control that society exercises over you. By seeing what they are doing to you. If you're able to do that, everything will be the same, but you will have dropped out. You will be in the world, but you will no longer be of the world. But you know how terrifying this is? Initially, it's like asking someone, a drug addict, who's going through withdrawal symptoms, it's like saying to him or her, listen, why don't you enjoy good, nourishing food and clean water from the mountain stream and the nice fresh morning air? Give that up for your drug. He cannot conceive of it. He cannot live without it. That's how terrible it is. That's how terrifying. How do you get out of it? Well, you've got to face that terror. You've got to understand the state you're in. What a terrible state, because you cannot live without people. It brings a tremendous loneliness. But then when you're with people, There's always that tension. You want to love people, you have to die to people. You have to die to your need for people. You have to understand what your drug is doing to you. First of all, be patient with yourself. Second, call the drug by its name. It's an artificial stimulant. You really want to enjoy life, enjoy the pleasures of the senses, enjoy the pleasures of the mind, enjoy your work, enjoy nature. Go up to the mountain and enjoy the trees and the stars at night and send the crowds away, and you will be completely alone, because then love is born in solitude and aloneness. You come to this land of love by passing through the land of death. And you will realize that your heart has brought you to this vast desert. In the beginning, it seems lonely because you're not accustomed to it. You're not accustomed to aloneness, which is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness means missing people. Aloneness means not needing anyone, enjoying people, but not needing them. Then at last, you can see them. Then you will realize that the desert suddenly blossoms into love. And there's a song in your heart, and it is springtime forever. Give yourself proper nourishment. Call the drug by its name and be patient the way you would with an addict. What powerful prayer that is. Let me give you a little meditation. Think of someone whose approval you need, you think you need, whose approval you desperately want, whose appreciation you want, and see if you can understand how in front of this person you have lost your freedom. Try that out. I'll give you a few seconds for that. Think of someone who you think is necessary to ease the pain of your loneliness, and understand how in front of this person you have lost your freedom. You're not free. You dare not be yourself. You cannot live like a king or a queen, a princess. Talking about being free, I'm reminded of this Irish prisoner who digs a tunnel underground under his prison cell, and he makes it to freedom through this tunnel. He comes out in the middle of a school compound, and he couldn't contain himself, so he begins to jump up and down saying, "I'm free, I'm free, I'm free." There was a little girl watching him scornfully. She says, "That's nothing, I'm 4." What does it mean to live like an emperor, an empress? You know what it means? It means you don't have to impress anyone anymore. You're completely at ease with everyone because you don't desire anything from anyone anymore. Well, I've got to clarify that. Of course you desire things from others. But you know, the non-fulfillment of that desire doesn't make you unhappy. See if you can get that. There are two types of desires. There's the desire on whose fulfillment our happiness depends. There's a desire on whose fulfillment our happiness does not depend. I go to a restaurant. I say, "Do you have mushroom soup?" And they say, "No, we haven't mushroom soup." "You ruined my dinner. I'm going out. Let's get out of this place. Let's go somewhere else." "Do you have mushroom soup?" "No." "What do you have?" How about sweet corn and chicken? Well, that's pretty good. I'd enjoy that too. What about tomato? I'd enjoy that too. See? The fulfillment of that desire does not affect your happiness. You're happy with it or without it. Like the guy who's waiting at the maternity ward and the nurse comes in and says, "Did you want a boy or a girl, sir?" He says, "I wanted a girl." She says, "Well, I got bad news for you. It's a boy." He says, "That's all right. That was my second choice." And a boy. How do you get this kind of guy down, huh? When you don't have to defend yourself anymore to anyone, you don't feel the need to apologize. Can you imagine that? You don't feel the need to explain. You don't have to impress. You're not bothered by what they say or what they think. It doesn't bother you. You're unaffected. My. Now love will begin. Not till then. Because you know something? As long as I need you, I cannot love you. As long as I need you for my happiness, I cannot love you. We'll take this up in the next program. How about this? I'll field a few questions if you have any. Who wants to begin? Okay. Would you stand up, please?
I'm trying to imagine myself as a parent treating my child without praise or affection or encouragement. That sounds like, when you describe it as a drug, as a bad thing to give a child, I just can't imagine myself being a good parent, a loving parent, and not giving that to a child.
Okay, great. Affection is fine. Did you hear me say affection wasn't all right? A parent giving affection is fine. But think of this. We're all busy telling people that they're okay. You know why? Because somebody told them they were not okay. And you know something? You're neither okay nor not okay. You're you. And if you really were you, and you were getting nourishment from what I called the pleasures of the senses and the mind, and you were not being drugged by society, you wouldn't miss it. There are cultures in which your not okay doesn't exist, so neither does your okay exist. Sometimes people feel they haven't been loved. I say to them, if you've survived to this age, you've got all the love you need. Listen to this. A woman who claims that she hasn't been loved and she needs it desperately. She goes to the movies and it's a great comedy and she's roaring with laughter. And for 10 minutes, she's forgotten that it's necessary to be loved. And she's happy. What do you know? When she comes out of the theater with her friend and she sees her friend go with her boyfriend, then she thinks, nobody loves me, I got no boyfriend. It's like when there was no television, nobody missed it. Now that everybody's got television, say, I don't have television. See? Loneliness is not cured by human contact, by contact with human beings. It is cured by contact with reality. Then you don't miss people. You enjoy them and you don't miss them. There's a great educationist who says, a man called Neil, some of you are probably familiar with him from his book Summerhill. He says, the healthy child is always interested in persons, is always, the unhealthy child is only interested in persons and is always clinging to its mother's skirts. The healthy child has no need for persons. They're busy exploring the world. Well, that's a good question. Helped clarify what I was saying. Anyone else? Oh, there are plenty of questions. That's wonderful. Would you stand up, please?
You spoke briefly about spirituality. Could you give us a definition of spirituality?
Spirituality is to be awake, to drop your illusions. Spirituality is never to be at the mercy of any event, thing, or person. Spirituality is to have discovered those diamond mines inside of you. Religion is meant to lead you to this. Alas, if you look at the world, It frequently doesn't. The meditation centers around a lovely gospel text of what use is it to you to gain the world and lose your soul. I'll go a bit slowly. You can think as I talk. Think of what you feel when you're looking at a sunset or you're in touch with nature. And compare that to the feeling you have when you're appreciated, you're praised, you're applauded. The first kind of feeling I call a soul feeling. The second type I call a world feeling. Think of the feeling you have when you win a race or an argument, when you make it to the top, when you're successful. World feeling. And contrast it with the feeling you get when you're doing work that you love, when you're immersed in a hobby, when you're reading a book that you thoroughly enjoy, or watching a movie that you enjoy. Soul feeling. Think of the time when you've got power, when you're the boss, when everyone is looking up to you, and the kind of feeling that creates. World feeling. Contrast that with the joy of intimacy, with the company of friends. You enjoy them without clinging to them, with laughter and merriment. Soul feeling. Let's take a look at those world feelings. They're not natural. They were invented by your society and mine to control us. They do not lead to happiness, only to excitement and thrills and anxiety and emptiness. And think of your own life. Is there a single day when you're not consciously or unconsciously attuned to what others think, what others feel, and what they will say about you? In other words, controlled by them, marching to the beat of their drum. And look around you and see if you find anyone who is freed from these feelings, world feelings. Everywhere you will find people immersed in these world feelings because they live soulless, empty lives. They gained the world, but they lost their soul. And when they come to die, they die without ever having lived. And here is a parable of life. A group of tourists sitting in a bus that is moving through gorgeous countryside. But the shades of the windows are drawn down, and they don't see a thing. And they're all quarreling among themselves as to who will have the seat of honor, who will be appreciated, who's the best looking, who's the most talented. And so it goes right to journey's end. If you can understand this, my dear friends, the understanding will melt the addiction. And you will be free, and you will understand the loveliness of what prayer is. Then you will discover what reality is, what God is, because you will have dropped one of our biggest illusions, the illusion that we need to be appreciated, to be popular, to succeed, to have prestige and honor and power and popularity. There's only one need, and that need is to be real, and that need is to love. When one discovers that, one is transformed. One's life becomes prayer.